One of my favorite parts about reading Star Wars myths and fables last year was figuring out what might be true in each story. I wanted to do the same with Star Wars Dark Legends by George Mann and the 7 Tall Tales of the Dark Side he included in his new book. There will be spoilers ahead if you haven't read it yet. Honestly, I found it all to be surprisingly grounded, to the point where I think almost everything could be true in the Star Wars galaxy. The first story is about the Grand Inquisitor stealing Force-sensitive children from an orphanage. It's obviously exaggerated to show how monstrous he would appear to a child, but the descriptions also aren't that far off. And we know the Inquisitors were responsible for taking Force-sensitive children for Project Harvester. We learn of a new surviving member of the Jedi Order named Kira Vantala, who fights the Grand Inquisitor to protect a child. Removing some of the exaggerations, I think this story probably happened. The second tale is about a mask purchased at Dok-Ondar's by a member of the First Order. He wears it, and it grants him visions of the past, inspiring the man to follow in its very vicious footsteps. He murders and manipulates his way up First Order ranks until he is himself murdered by a subordinate, and the mask is returned to Dok-Ondar's. You can actually see it in the Den of Antiquities in Galaxy's Edge, but I'm on the fence here for this story. It feels like a legend that could have been created surrounding the mysterious relic. Maybe Doc himself made it up to surround the object with intrigue. But we have also seen stories that tell us about Sith Masks, how they become imbued with dark side power, how they can possess or provide visions. So there is some truth to this tale, enough that I would definitely not try to buy that mask for myself. The third is about an Imperial officer who is unexpectedly promoted to lieutenant after his predecessor disappears. Then he sees his predecessor as a ghost, choking and gasping for life. Eventually, the main character bumps into Darth Vader and suffers the same fate, prompting the promotion of yet another officer. This one sounds a lot like a tall tale Imperial officers would share in the mess hall or something to scare each other. I have to imagine word got around of Vader, his powers, and how those serving under him tended to choke to death. I feel comfortable saying that this is just a ghost story told in-universe, but obviously we as the audience know it does have a lot of truth to it. The fourth is about a moon called Lupal that has fallen into ruin thanks to its dying star. I've actually got a lot to say about the star that I'm saving for another video, but for now I will focus on the moon and the characters. So the moon used to have a great civilization, and now people search the ruins for treasure only to fall under the effect of the star's solar flares, which happen to turn people to the dark side. Specifically, it changes a gentle Shastavanin into a murderous beast, leaving no survivors among his crew. To me, that kind of cements this tale into ghost story territory. If there were no survivors, how do we know about this story at all? It's still one of my favorites of the book, but I don't think it happened. That said, I'm sure there is an element of truth to it. Maybe people have ventured to that moon and never returned. Maybe there have been reports of the dying star and its effects on people as they fly by. I could see that being true, and then inspiring tales such as this one. Next up is a story about a Jedi Master and his Padawan who both wound up using this sort of talisman to absorb all of their darkest desires and impulses rather than confronting and dealing with them. The relic would take it all in until it could hold no more, and then it would unleash itself at night by controlling its wearers, who would then go into the lowest levels of Coruscant and murder people. But during the day they would appear as the most noble and honorable the Jedi Order had to offer. Yet again, I think this absolutely could happen in the Star Wars galaxy. None of these stories have been more outlandish than something like the Screaming Citadel comic. But I could also see this just being a fable to tell Jedi younglings about the necessity of confronting and overcoming darkness, rather than just burying it and ignoring it. It's also a nice reminder for the real world that everyone has darkness inside of them, even those that appear to be the best of us. It reminds me of one of my favorite lines from this book. It's actually in the first story about the Grand Inquisitor, but it says, "Evil was embodied not in the form of monsters, but of men. All the terrors that had so recently blighted the galaxy were enacted at the behest of individuals and not creatures of the night. Everyone is dangerous, everyone has the dark side and the potential for evil. It's the same lesson Luke learns when he sees his own face in Vader's mask in the dark side cave." But moving on to the next story, this time I think it actually happened exactly as it is described. It's about Darth Kaldoth, who appeared in Myths and Fables last year and was mentioned in Dooku Jedi Lost. So already there's more legitimacy to a character who has popped up more than once, especially in a definitely not a Fable story. This one is about Night Sisters who tried and failed to seek revenge on him by possessing his mind across the galaxy until one of them was actually lost and trapped inside Kaldoth's mind forever. That sounds like it would be within the capabilities of Night Sister magic. I also just really like the moral of this one, and it feels very relatable for our digital world, actually. You see people getting into these online feuds. People become obsessed with other people and trolling them or taking them down or whatever you want to call it. But if you're spending all your time checking in on these other people, haven't they already beaten you in a way? The thought of misguided revenge or comeuppance or whatever these weird quests are can be consuming, so much so that you can become basically lost in the thoughts of your so-called enemies forever, forgetting to actually be yourself due to jealousy or morbid fascination or something. Centering your life and your time and energy around, quote, going after someone online is no way to live your life. I think some members of Star Wars Twitter could definitely stand to hear that. Probably nobody watching this video, but some individuals definitely popped into my head while I read this story. Anyway, let's get into the final tale about a Sith Lord named Darth Noctus searching for Exegol and the key to immortality. On Exegol, she meets a small, golem-like creature who assists her in completing a ritual laid out by a Darth Sanguis long ago. The ritual involves the willing sacrifice of that creature, but when it's complete, Darth Noctus becomes like that creature and realizes too late that it was Darth Sanguis the whole time, waiting to finally end his miserable life. I could see this one going either way. It might be true. I do like what it says about the Sith and their quest to live forever. They want to cling to life at any cost because they know nothing good awaits them in the afterlife. And so this is how they achieve it, alone in the dark, living out the rest of their days as a shriveled creature. This one I leave up to interpretation. I'm kinda leaning towards it not happening, but that's just my gut feeling. Noctis is described as having a sickle-shaped lightsaber blade, which is cool in theory and in legend, but not something I actually want to exist in Star Wars. So that's the one piece of evidence that makes me think this is more myth than anything, but it's still a good myth. And that's the point. I liked most of these stories a lot. Whether or not they actually happened in the universe, it doesn't matter. They were fun and engaging, and some of them really spoke to me thematically, which is a very Star Wars thing to do. It's fun to wonder whether or not these stories are quote-unquote real, but that's not the point of this book. And when you come down to it, all of Star Wars is fake and in space. It's all myth and legend. But that's all I have to say for today. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.